I just had a big insight while listening to this last part that I was editing. And I can't remember it exactly, but the sense of it is that when we get acquainted with this creative energy, and then we're labeled with a mental illness and put into this system of believing that we're defective, we're mentally ill, seeing psychiatrists. That is all what's in front of us as our life. And this creative energy is trying to create more of our life. So when we're immersed in that, it's going to create more of that for us. Because the creativity doesn't have motivation, it doesn't have volition, it doesn't have a goal, it doesn't have reward and punishment. It creates with what is in front of it. Our ego is a projection that projects reward, punishment, accomplishment, goals, motivation. But creative energy is inert. It has no volition of itself but to create with that we put in front of us, or that is put in front of us. So when after that creative energy fizzles out and we're told we have this mental illness and we're thrust into that paradigm, when the creative energy does its ebb and flow as it does, it's a different biorhythm, then if we're in the mental health system, when that energy comes again, it's going to create more of the mental health system for us, unless we can find a way to step out of that. By having the mental health system as our canvas of our life, it's going to create more of that. Because this creative energy does not discriminate. It creates with what is in front of us. It can only utilize what is part of our moments now. And then when I realized that, I was thinking to myself, holy shit, I gotta get out of this now. Because if I'm immersing myself in that again and working in it, that creative energy is going to create with that. But maybe I'm not in danger because I'm outside of it and I'm sort of dipping my toe back in, but I don't know. I don't think I'm in danger, because seeing the tweet, I was able to create this email, and listening to it, maybe I'm speaking up in a way that people like me don't have the opportunity to, because if they do, then it's seen as a symptom of their mental illness. And who's going to listen anyway? So I don't know, I just had this insight about how we're put in this system, and then the creative energy is forced to create with that, and unfortunately creates more of that. When our life is made all about mental illness, nearly everything that happens in life can seem like it's about mental illness. I'm scheduled to do some work in peer support, but I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't go to those conferences. I change from morning to night. This morning I was saying, oh, I don't know about my shift in peer support, but then I did enjoy my shift in peer support. So it wasn't that. I don't know. I really don't know. And then I was thinking too, as I was listening to myself saying, maybe I shouldn't read these tweets and say these things. Maybe I should be reading those tweets and saying things like that. I don't know about should and shouldn't, but since it's created so easily, without effort, it just happens. Maybe that's a sign that I could read these things and create some kind of alternate context or ways to think about it, or critique the way the scientists are probing at us. It's like they're trying to help us after they've kicked us down to the basement. And they're making money and getting all this money for research when that money could go to help us directly. You could say, well, they could go towards self-direction. And the number one predictor of positive outcome is somebody being able to self-direct, to choose. So put the money into that if they want outcomes, not studying to create more treatment that's contrived and all this crap. Just ask us what we want and help us to move towards that. Ask us what we want to create as our life and use the creative energy for that, and not staying within the framework of the mental health system. Anyways, moving on. And the fact that we become so creative all of a sudden shows that there's new capacities and new potentials coming online. So yeah, I wanted to get that out of my system, and I'm learning that looking at anything like that provokes an unfolding of something meaningful for me, it's old meaning, and I want to move away from that. That's the reason why I don't watch TV, because there can be so many things in TV that will create this movement. And when that movement is created, I wrote that email, and then I had this other movement of wanting to share that on video. So it's this cumulative thing, and then that happens for numerous things throughout the day, like breathing coherence and learning something about breathing coherence. And I watched a bit of a talk on it, and it was interesting because they said that they recommend for women to use 8 breaths per minute. So an in and an out breath per minute. 8 of those. And for men, because their lungs are bigger, use 6. And the slowest breaths per minute rate they have on the app is 4 breaths per minute. And that's what I use. If I do any faster, if I do 5 or 6, the coherence doesn't happen nearly as good. And when I was first using the app, it was really hard for me to get into coherence until I changed the breathing rate down to the slowest possible, which is 4 breaths per minute. And my breathing rate is very slow in general because I probably efficiently exchange oxygen or something, who knows. But so yeah, that's interesting. And I did a muse session last night, and it was interesting because it said my brain was the most active ever, and it might have been because I had my heater running, and I'm finding that any sounds that are present, my brain definitely picks them up. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's like, oh, I'm distracted. I'm responding to what's actually there. If there's a sound there, my brain is listening and hears it, and I don't choose to hear it or not. I can't help but hear it because I'm not so narrowed in. I don't have my focused attention, and I've talked about this a lot. It's not about focusing one's attention at all. So it's choiceless awareness, like Krishnamurti says. If something is around, the brain will choicelessly flow with it. So yeah, I don't know why my brain was so active, but I think it was the sound of the heater being on. Not sure. So I don't know why I was so calm that time, and I don't know why I was so active later that day. But subjectively, even though it said my brain was really active, I actually felt quite blissed out because I'd done 10 minutes of breathing coherence, and then I was doing the muse. So maybe the blissed out state is an active state. The brain is really energetic and doing something. It's hard to say. I will need to keep exploring. And these are the things that I prefer to utilize energy to explore, as opposed to looking at one silly tweet about a silly study and then writing an email that says, you guys don't get it at all. And the trouble is, we as people who are labeled with bipolar, we don't get it either, for the most part. But we can figure it out. And we can figure it out in our own life faster than science is ever going to help us figure out, because they take 20 years to bring anything that they find to us. So it's 20 years behind. So where I'm at right now, having transcended, is probably 20 years to make that the thing that usually happens for people. I just noticed now I can interject directly through iMovie. And I've been doing this for over a year. That's crazy. But I wanted to say that since we're not using science, we can figure this out and make it happen for us for real a lot faster. We can make it happen in several months when we learn about this and move into this. So the more people that do that, it's not going to take us 20 years. That would be if we were utilizing the scientific process. But we're using the creative Gaia biorhythm, the Gaia rhythm, to figure it out in our own subjective, objective life. In 20 years, people will figure it out for themselves and together, and we'll be co-creating and fulfilling our unique function, our unique neurotribal function in this world. We will have co-created that. We don't know what that function is. And I had an insight the other day that told me that this creative algorithm that we're in touch with for a certain percentage of the time when we get labeled with a mental illness called bipolar disorder is creative. And this creative algorithm is actually creating the new way of being in the brain. And we're co-creating with it. It's trying to figure it out. It tries something for a while and it seemingly fails, and the brain learns. And then it sort of peters out for a while, and then it tries again, and then it tries again. The brain is trying to create a new operating system. And it's not that the brain even knows what that is. It's trying to create that and create it in enough people, and then we collaborate enough to bring that online for more people to operate as once it's been created, because it hasn't even been created yet. So it needs to be created and integrated. So that creative energy is trying to create a new operating system and algorithm of the brain. And we co-create it by participating with the energy. And that's the other thing I learned about the coherence breathing. I did it sitting in just a wooden dining chair, and I was doing the breathing rate at 4 breaths per minute, and I wasn't really getting into coherence. But then what I did was I was kind of sitting like this, and I shifted back so my shoulder blades were back and sort of back with the chair just a little bit, so I wasn't slouched. And it wasn't much. It was like the difference between this and just sort of rotating my shoulders back. And then I was in coherence, no problem. So I did a course called Body Awakening Method by Carol Maureen Friesen years ago, and she talks about posture and the importance of that. And so that shifted my body posture, and then being able to breathe coherently. We don't know when we're breathing coherently. We may do it sometimes throughout the day, but what I learned from that is that posture is very important. So maybe if I have the right posture during the day, I'm breathing coherently 50 to 80% of the time without using the app to double check, because I did the little shift and then I was in coherence easily. Because I noticed after that it didn't matter as much if I even followed the breath rate. I was breathing even more slowly. I sort of want to ask them, well, can you make it down to 2 breaths per minute for people who can breathe that slowly sometimes? So they say that breathing coherently in this rhythmic rate is what helps to send the right electrical nutrition to the brain. Well, it seems like if we don't have the right posture, if our spine isn't in the right alignment, the right electrical nutrition isn't going to the brain either. And then when I realized that, I sort of saw some of the theory behind chiropractics. Not saying that's it for sure, but having the spine in alignment, we can breathe better and send the right electricity to the brain. And I'm not a chiropractor. I'm just making an educated guess, making a little hypothesis from my own experiment with this. So map consciousness is adjusting us towards creativity. It's a creative algorithm. And So yeah, I wanted to get that out of my system, and maybe I'll go through and erase some of those things, or maybe I'll wait till November 6th. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I'm going to frame all of this next phase of things, because I'm not even sure if I want to frame it as something for people with a so-called mental illness. Because perhaps if I frame it for creative people or people who identify as highly sensitive or something, and start this dialogue with people that maybe aren't in the basement of things, then as we network together, we can come back and help the others together. Because I feel like we need to have more of us together to really go back and reach out to those who are wanting to transcend, and then from there we can reach back and help those who might not be aware that they can transcend, and see if they want to. If they don't, that's okay. I sure wanted to. So yeah, I'm feeling a lot of energy. I'm feeling the sense of what I was talking about on the ferry ride, of this intensity that feels kind of like fight or flight, but it's not. It feels like this needs to happen now. Not any particular thing, but whatever it is that is arising, there's this urgency behind it. There's this feeling, and I would maybe call it passion, but not a particular passion. So I'm wondering about that. Good night. See you tomorrow. It's a bit of a milestone day. I know I said good night and it's getting late, but there's one other thing that I realized I want to say to myself related to this study that I was talking about. How it's saying that we're willing to work harder for rewards. And I was seeing how I've utilized this creative energy with myself to create a process of self-dialogue, which has helped me co-create my way out of the system that was imprisoning me. And isn't that what the energy is trying to do? But it's not a reward per se. It's trying to get out of prison. I don't think a prisoner that's trying to get out of prison thinks that's a reward. They're just trying to get out of something that they're trapped in. And I was also thinking about how I've been doing this for over a year, and there's no reward for me, but it has created something, that's for sure. But I had no idea what it was going to create. I participated in the co-creative process, and it co-created something. But there was no rewards for me along the way in creating this. If there is any reward, the reward is that now I'm able to live my life as I want, without treatments imposed on me. And if people were able to utilize their creative energy, they would likely create their way out of prison. But we're allowed to be sold back our creativity to stay creative within the prison, within treatment. And the process that I somehow participated with by creating these dialogues on video, if there is any reward, it'll be to show people like me the way out of the system that would probe us, study us, treat us, and tell us that we'll be in it forever, tell us that we have to take medications for life, etc., etc., etc. All the early hypnotizing that goes on. So we can live a life beyond all of that. And I've worked hard, for sure. I've worked hard to create my way out of it. And my biggest reward will be if anyone else, by virtue of the process that I've harvested, can do the same and avoid having clinicians come at them one day, 20 years from now, saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to help you with your creativity. When for those 20 years, if we're really with our creativity, we will create our way out of prison. We'll create our way out of the prison that science has created for us, and that science continues to fund more science to play with us, really. So I've been creating just to create, and it's innately fulfilling within itself. I don't even know what I'm going to say the next sentence half the time. How would I be projecting some kind of reward for that? Well, likely tomorrow, this intense energy of PMS. I won't even say that. I won't even blame it on something. I'll just say this needs to be said. That's all there is to it.